Hello, I'm Raina Morgan with iHealthTube. We're chatting with Robert Kowalski. He is the author of The Blood Pressure Cure. And that's a strong word, cure. I'm really glad to hear you say that there's a cure for high blood pressure.
There's no question about it. Just as the things that we do in modern Western lifestyle lead to the rise in blood pressure, so also we can start doing things to lower that pressure on a permanent level without the use of prescription drugs.
Let's talk about all the variables that affect blood pressure. For example, sleep. Most of us wouldn't think that sleep affects our blood pressure, but you say that it does in your book.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, as we get into sleep, our blood pressure naturally falls.
Okay.
And that would be in a normal individual. They do what's called a 24-hour ambulatory test where someone would wear that blood pressure cuff 24 hours a day, and they keep readings on the computer to see what it's like throughout the entire 24-hour period, which we couldn't do on our own because we're sleeping, so we can't measure our own at that time. Now, as we're sleeping, blood pressure normally comes down. Well, here's the problem. If you're not getting a good night's sleep, really restful, where you fall asleep at 10 o'clock at night and you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, or whatever your normal schedule would be, then you're going to see little surges as you're waking up, because everyone experiences what's called a morning surge in blood pressure. It's dropping down during the night as you're sleeping. Then at the point where you wake up, there's a little surge in the blood pressure. It goes up as you start into your day, into your waking hours. Now, if you're waking up, let's say you've been under some stress, you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you start thinking about all the things that are stressing you during your day and the problems that you're facing, balancing your checkbook, let's say, paying the bills, or whatever it happens to be. At that time, you're getting a surge. Now, let's say you fall back asleep and you wake up again at 4, another surge. And each of those surges actually does some damage to the wall of the artery and increases the level of the blood pressure by so doing. Now, here's one of the biggest problems that we have with sleeping, and it's called sleep apnea.
Now, are a lot of people affected by that?
An awful lot of them. If you hear someone snoring, it's likely that that person has sleep apnea. Now, the word means simply this. Apnea is Greek for lack of oxygen.
Okay.
We're not getting air. Well, the reason we don't get air is because we're not breathing. Literally, during the night, people will stop breathing. And that's where they'll just, it's as though they were literally dead. And then all of a sudden, they'll wake up and that's what the snoring is. That as they suddenly wake up and they're now struggling to get air into the lungs to stay alive. There are people who are tested in the laboratories and in what's called a sleep study in a special laboratory. They put the electrodes on and test the person throughout the entire night. Some people, I'm not exaggerating this, will wake up 50 times per hour.
Per hour?
Per hour. That means virtually every minute they're
Struggling,
waking up.
Struggling for air.
Yeah. They're waking up and then stopping breathing again. And it just keeps going like this throughout the entire time. That's why the people with sleep apnea will wake up in the morning feeling more tired than when they went to sleep at night. They've been struggling to stay alive, in effect, in a very real way, just struggling to get air into their lungs and therefore oxygen into the bloodstream. Well, there are a number of ways of handling that. That's beyond the scope of this discussion, but by all means, if you are feeling that way in the morning, if your spouse has said, you know, you're keeping me awake, we ought to get separate bedrooms, and it sometimes literally gets to that point, see your doctor. There are a lot of ways to deal with this problem very effectively and on a permanent kind of basis, and it will help to get into a better night's sleep, which will in turn assure a lower blood pressure.
So that's how sleep really does affect our blood pressure, those surges.
Those surges, absolutely so. So we want to get a good night's sleep. And one of the things that they've learned is that when you're sleeping, you can actively lower blood pressure while you sleep. And
Really?
here are two ways to do it. One, instead of taking that daily aspirin tablet in the morning the way most people would, instead have that tablet in the evening just before you go to bed. And when you do so, take another tablet along with it. That one's melatonin. We've heard about melatonin for getting over jet lag, to
Right.
signal the body that it's time to sleep. About a half hour before bedtime, if you were to take that low dose, and you don't, it's not one of these things where
Right.
if a little is good, more is better. Actually, the lower doses work better. So no more than 2 milligrams of melatonin in the evening, ideally at 30 minutes to even an hour before bedtime, will, number one, give you a better night's sleep, and it actually acts, in both cases, the aspirin and the melatonin, to lower blood pressure while you're getting a good night's sleep.
Okay, thank you, Bob.